I was 41 when I learned that the most dangerous men don't hide in shadows. They stand in spotlights, crying for cameras, building foundations in their dead wives' names. My brother-in-law Eric was one of those men. He killed my sister Sophia, called it suicide, and became the face of male grief awareness. It took me 3 years to prove he was a serial killer. And I did it by becoming exactly what he wanted, a woman who believed him. Welcome to Little Bunny Stories. If you're new here, my name is Marisol, and this is the story of how I rigged a murderer's trial by pretending to be his ally. If this channel has ever made you feel less alone, hit subscribe. We tell stories like this every week. And if you're watching because someone killed your sister and the world called it her fault, stay until the end. I need you to hear how this ends. Here's my story. Sophia sent me a voicemail 2 days before she died. I was on a stakeout, tracking a bailed jumper through downtown, and I let it go to message because I thought it could wait. I thought everything could wait. That was the last time I let myself believe that time was something I had in abundance. Marisol, she said, her voice low, almost whispering, with that particular tension she got when she was about to do something brave and stupid. Eric has a drawer he shouldn't have. A locked drawer in his study. I found the key in his golf bag. I'm going to open it this weekend. I love you. I'll call you after. She didn't call after. She was found in their bathtub on Sunday morning, wrists slashed, empty pill bottles on the tile, a note on her phone saying she couldn't do it anymore, that she was sorry, that Eric deserved better. The coroner ruled it suicide within 4 hours. The detective assigned was a man named Harlow, who played golf with Eric at the country club. The case was closed before I could drive across the city to identify her body. I sat in the morgue, looking at my sister's face, and I knew. Not because I'm a detective, though I was then, a 14-year veteran of the force. I knew because I knew Sophia. She was the brave one, the stupid one, the one who climbed trees at 7 and broke her arm and climbed the same tree the next day. She didn't swallow pills in bathtubs. She confronted. She fought. She opened drawers she shouldn't open and dealt with consequences later. And the note, Eric deserves better, was wrong. Sophia didn't think anyone deserved her. She had spent 34 years believing she was too much and not enough, too loud and too quiet, too visible and invisible. But she never, not once, apologized for existing. That note was written by someone who wanted her to apologize. Someone who wanted her erased, and her erasure framed as her own choice. I told Harlow. I told the lieutenant. I told the captain, who looked at me with the particular pity of a man who has already decided you're grieving, not thinking. Marisol, he said, I know this is hard, but your sister had a history. The antidepressants in her system were prescribed by Eric's colleague, I finished. A psychiatrist who plays golf with both of them, who prescribed them 2 weeks before she died, despite no prior diagnosis. Depression can be hidden, depression can be manufactured, and notes can be forged, and wrists can be slashed after someone is already unconscious. He sighed, you're too close to this, take leave, grieve, we'll handle it. They didn't handle it, they closed it. And I learned in the weeks that followed that Eric Vance was not just a grieving husband. He was a connected grieving husband. His hospital donated to the police union. His golf partners included 2 judges and the deputy mayor. His Foundation for Women's Mental Health, announced 3 weeks after Sophia's funeral, had a board that included the chief of police's wife. I could have fought within the system. I had friends, allies, people who believed me. But I also had 14 years of watching the system work, watching cases disappear when the accused had the right connections, watching victims become unreliable narrators when their stories threatened powerful men. I knew how this ended if I played by the rules, so I stopped playing. I resigned from the force 6 months after Sophia's death. I told everyone I was burned out, grieving, unable to separate my professional judgment from my personal loss. I let them believe I was broken. I let Eric believe it too. I attended his foundation's gala, tears in my eyes, accepting his handshake, his sympathy, his Marisol. I know how much you meant to her. You meant more, I said, my voice trembling with the exact amount of grief I knew he expected. She talked about you constantly. How supportive you were, how understanding. His smile was perfect, practiced, measured, the smile of a man who had performed grief before. I tried, he said. I wish I had tried harder. I wish I had seen the signs. I wished he had seen me. The real me behind the tears. The one who was memorizing his face, his connections, his patterns. But he didn't see me. Men like Eric never see women like me. We're background, support, the sisters who grieve while they build their platforms. I opened my agency the next month. Marisol Vega Investigations, specializing in domestic violence cases that fell through the cracks. I took the cases no one wanted: immigrants whose husbands had connections, wealthy women whose prenups made prosecution complicated, the dead women whose deaths were ruled accidental because their husbands were donors. I built a reputation as someone who found what the police missed, who asked questions that made powerful people uncomfortable. And I built my case against Eric. Slowly, carefully, the way you build a house of cards in a windstorm. His first wife was named Patricia. Patricia Chen, a pediatric nurse he married at 26, when he was still a resident. She died 12 years later, overdose of prescription medication, ruled accidental. Her mother, Mrs. Chen, had always believed it was murder. She had told the police about Eric's temper, about the bruises Patricia hid under scrubs, about the life insurance policy he had pushed her to sign. The police had listened, filed a report, done nothing. Eric was already a rising star at the hospital, already connected, already untouchable. I found Mrs. Chen through old case files, through the particular network of women who remember the dead when the system forgets them. She was 73, living in a studio apartment, surrounded by photographs of Patricia at every age. She was going to leave him, Mrs. Chen told me, her hands shaking on her teacup. She told me the week before. She had found something. A drawer, she said. A locked drawer with things that didn't make sense. And then she was gone. And they said it was pills, and I knew, but who would believe a Chinese mother against a doctor? A drawer. The same word Sophia had used. The same pattern, 11 years apart. His second wife was Linda Henderson. She fell down a staircase 3 years after marrying Eric, 2 years after Patricia's death. The fall was ruled accidental. She had been drinking. The autopsy showed wine in her system. The stairs were steep. But her daughter Claire, 15 at the time, had heard the argument, had heard the impact, had heard Eric crying afterward, not the broken sobbing of a grieving husband, but something else, rhythmic, controlled, almost pleased. I found Claire through social media, through the particular desperation of a child who has never been believed. She was 28 now, a social worker, still carrying the sound of that crying in her bones. I told my grandparents, she said, her voice flat, rehearsed, the voice of someone who has told this story too many times to too many people who didn't listen. I told them he pushed her. They said I was traumatized, confused, that I didn't understand what grief sounded like. They took his side. They went to his wedding to your sister. They sent him a gift. The Hendersons refused to speak to me. "We don't want to revisit this," Mr. Henderson said through a closed door, his voice trembling with something that wasn't grief, was shame, perhaps, or the particular terror of having chosen wrong and being unable to admit it. Eric is a good man. He was good to Linda. Accidents happen. The third wife didn't exist, officially. Eric had married her in Mexico, where records were harder to trace, where her family was too poor to hire lawyers, where she was undocumented and therefore invisible to the system that might have protected her. Her name was Rosa, and she had simply returned to her country 6 months after the wedding. According to Eric, no missing person report, no investigation, just a woman who had disappeared, leaving behind a passport that Eric kept in his locked drawer. I found Rosa through immigration records, through the particular network of women who help women cross borders and disappear. She was alive, living in Osaka, working in a clinic, terrified that Eric would find her. "He told me he would kill my family," she said over a video call, her face pixelated, her voice distorted. "He showed me photographs. My mother at the market, my brother at school. He said accidents happen to people who don't know their place." I believed him. I still believe him. I believed him too, but I also believed that belief could be weaponized. I spent 2 years building the evidence. Not for court. I knew the courts were closed to me, that Eric's connections would bury anything I found, that my methods were too questionable, my sources too vulnerable. I built it for something else. For the moment when exposure would be more powerful than prosecution. For the stage that Eric had built himself, the spotlight he had claimed, the platform he had constructed on my sister's grave. I approached him at a fundraiser, 18 months into my investigation. I was changed, I told him. Therapy, reflection, the slow acceptance that Sophia's death was not his fault. "I blamed you," I said, tears in my eyes, the exact amount he expected. "But I've learned, depression is a thief, it steals people we love, and the best thing we can do is honor them by helping others." He ate it up. He needed me, a detective, a skeptic, a sister who had publicly doubted him, now converted to his cause. "Marisol," he said, gripping my hands, "this is exactly what Sophia would have wanted, for us to work together. To turn our pain into purpose. I worked with his foundation for 6 months. I attended meetings, smiled at donors, helped organize awareness events where Eric spoke about the hidden epidemic of female depression, and I recorded everything. Not illegally, I was careful, consulting with lawyers, making sure my presence at events where I was invited gave me the right to document. But I also recorded the between moments. The car rides where he confided in me, seeing me as a safe audience, a converted critic, someone who would understand his unique perspective. He told me about Patricia, not as a confession, as an anecdote, a teaching moment, a story that demonstrated his depth. She was fragile, he said, driving us back from a conference. Beautiful but fragile. She found things that upset her, my past, things I had done before we met. She couldn't handle it. Some women are like glass, Marisol, they break under pressure. It's not cruelty to recognize that. It's honesty. He told me about Linda. The drinking was a problem, I tried to help. But she was angry, always angry about things that didn't matter. The fall was unfortunate, but in a way it solved things for both of us. He never mentioned Rosa, but he mentioned a woman from Mexico once, casually, as an example of cultural differences in marriage. Some women don't understand American expectations, he said. They think marriage is about love, it's about partnership, about mutual benefit. When the benefit ends, the partnership should end. Cleanly, I recorded it all. I transcribed it. I built a timeline, a pattern, a portrait of a man who had killed 3 times and was preparing, I believed, for a 4th. Because Eric was dating again. A young resident at his hospital, bright, ambitious, already isolated from her family by the demands of her schedule. Already receiving support from her attending physician, who understood her stress. I could have warned her, I considered it, but warning one woman wouldn't stop Eric. It would just make him more careful, more selective, more skilled at hiding. I needed to stop him permanently, and for that I needed more than recordings. I needed the drawer. Sophia's key still worked. She had given it to me years ago, just in case, laughing, never imagining the case would be her own death. I entered Eric's house while he was at a medical conference in Chicago. Using the alarm code, Sophia had also shared 0427, their anniversary, the date he had probably chosen because it was easy to remember and easy to forget. The drawer was in his study, a heavy oak desk that had belonged to his father. It was locked, but the lock was simple, almost insulting in its confidence. Inside were the passports, Patricia's, Linda's, Rosa's. The jewelry, wedding rings, a necklace I recognized as Sophia's, a bracelet that had been Patricia's mother's, and the photographs, not memorial photographs, trophy photographs. Patricia in the bathtub, eyes open, the same position where Sophia would later be found. Linda at the bottom of the stairs, neck angled wrong, Eric's shadow visible in the corner of the frame. Rosa, bound, gagged, alive in the photograph, her eyes wide with the particular terror of someone who knows they are about to die and has no power to stop it. I photographed everything. I didn't touch anything. I left the drawer exactly as I found it, locked the desk, reset the alarm, and drove home shaking. Not from fear, from rage. From the particular violence of seeing what Eric had seen, of understanding that he kept these images not despite their horror but because of it. That he returned to them, reviewed them, used them to relive the moments when he had absolute power over women who had trusted him. I had what I needed, but I also had a problem. The evidence was obtained illegally, breaking and entering, at minimum. If I took it to the police, Eric's lawyers would destroy it, and me in the process. I needed a different stage. The stage he had built himself. The press conference was Eric's idea. A major announcement, his foundation was partnering with the city police department to create a women's mental health response team, officers trained to recognize signs of depression in female partners. It was perfect for him, more visibility, more credibility, more opportunities to position himself as the man who understood women's pain because he had lost one. He wanted me on stage. Marisol, your presence would mean everything. A detective, a sister, someone who has seen both sides. It shows that healing is possible, that we can move forward. I agreed. I helped plan the event, chose the venue, arranged the media coverage. I made sure the screens behind the stage were large, high definition, connected to a presentation system that I would control. The day before, I contacted the FBI. Not the local office, the field office in Chicago, where Eric had no connections, where I had a contact from an old case. A woman named Agent Okonkwo who had spent her career tracking predators who hid behind professional respectability. I gave her everything, the recordings, the photographs, the timeline, the witnesses. Rosa, willing to testify if protected. Mrs. Chen, ready to speak publicly for the first time. Claire, who had waited 13 years to be believed. Agent Okonkwo listened. She asked questions. She reviewed my evidence and told me finally, it's not enough for federal charges. Not yet, we need more. We need him to confess or to be caught in the act or to expose himself. I said publicly, irrevocably, so that your office has no choice but to act. She looked at me for a long moment. What are you planning, Marisol? I'm planning to give him the stage he wants, I said, and then I'm planning to change the script. She didn't stop me. She didn't help me either, that would have been conspiracy. But she didn't stop me, and that was enough. The press conference was held in a hotel ballroom, 300 attendees, live streamed to news outlets across the state. Eric was radiant, tanned, fit, his graying hair perfectly styled, his suit tailored to suggest competence without ostentation. He shook hands with the police chief, posed for photographs with the deputy mayor, embraced me on stage with the particular warmth of a man who believes he has converted an enemy into an asset. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice carrying the practiced modulation of a man who had spoken at hundreds of conferences. We are here today because of a tragedy. My wife Sophia, like too many women, suffered in silence. She hid her depression, her pain, until it was too late. And I missed the signs. I failed her. And I have spent every day since trying to ensure that no other husband, no other partner, fails the woman they love. The audience murmured approval. Cameras flashed. I stood to his left, smiling, my hand resting lightly on his arm, the picture of supportive partnership. That is why this foundation exists. That is why this partnership with the police department matters. We are creating a system that sees women, that hears them, that intervenes before tragedy strikes. I nodded, still smiling. Then I pressed the button in my pocket. The screen behind him changed. Not his presentation, my video. The title card read, The Drawer, a timeline of Eric Vance. The audience went silent. Eric, still facing forward, didn't see it immediately. He continued speaking, something about holistic approaches to mental health, while behind him the first image appeared. Patricia in the bathtub, eyes open, dead. Someone gasped. Eric turned. The video was edited with precision, my detective training, my years of building cases for juries. Each image appeared with a date, a name, a piece of evidence. Patricia, 2011, overdose. Life insurance doubled. Linda, 2014, fall, wine in her system though she was allergic to sulfites. Rosa, 2016, returned to Mexico, passport still in Eric's possession. Sophia, 2023, suicide, the voicemail playing over her photograph. Eric has a drawer he shouldn't have. Then the recordings. Eric's voice, his smooth, practiced voice, saying things that no amount of context could explain away. Some women are like glass. They break under pressure. Fall was unfortunate, but in a way it solved things. When the benefit ends, the partnership should end. Cleanly. Eric lunged for the control panel. I stepped in front of him, still smiling, my voice carrying through the microphone to every camera, every phone, every recording device in the room. My name is Detective Marisol Vega, I said. Retired, because the system that was supposed to protect my sister protected her killer instead. My sister Sophia did not commit suicide. She was murdered by this man, Eric Vance, who has killed at least 3 women and attempted to kill a 4th. The evidence you are seeing has been provided to the FBI. The witnesses you will hear from have been protected. And this partnership, I gestured to the police chief, who was already backing toward the exit, this partnership between a serial killer and the department that protected him, ends today. Eric grabbed my arm. His face was purple, distorted. The mask finally slipped. You bitch, he hissed, low enough for the microphone to miss but loud enough for me to hear. You fucking bitch, you'll what? I asked, still smiling, my voice still carrying. Kill me like you killed them. Go ahead, Eric, there are 300 witnesses, and they're all recording. He let go. The FBI agents, Agent Okonkwo had come, she had believed, she had prepared, were already moving through the crowd. Eric saw them and ran, actually ran, through a side door, down a service corridor, as if he could outrun what he had built, what I had exposed, what the cameras had captured forever. They caught him at the loading dock. He didn't resist, not physically. He just stood there, breathing hard, while the agents read him his rights, and I watched from the doorway, still smiling, my face aching with the effort of holding the expression that had hidden my rage for 3 years. The trial took 8 months. Eric fought everything, the evidence, the witnesses, my credibility. His lawyers claimed entrapment, claimed I had manufactured the recordings, claimed I was a grieving sister who had lost her mind and framed an innocent man. They dragged Sophia's name through mud I had thought was bottomless. They suggested she was unstable, unfaithful, suicidal long before Eric met her. But they couldn't explain the drawer. They couldn't explain the passports, the jewelry, the photographs that Eric had kept like trophies. They couldn't explain Rosa, flown in from Osaka under FBI protection, testifying through tears about the threats, the violence, the moment she had believed she would die. They couldn't explain Mrs. Chen, 76 years old, standing in court and pointing at Eric and saying, "You killed my daughter." I always knew, and now everyone knows. Eric was convicted of 3 murders and 1 attempted murder. He was sentenced to life without parole. The foundation collapsed, its board members resigning in waves of performative shock as if they hadn't known, hadn't suspected, hadn't chosen not to see. The police chief retired. The deputy mayor declined to run for re-election. The system that had protected Eric for 15 years crumbled, not because it was just, but because it was exposed, and exposure was the only justice I could achieve. I didn't celebrate. I went to Sophia's grave, the first time since the funeral, and I brought a small wooden box. It was the drawer, or rather a replica I had made, the same size, the same weight, but empty, open, lid removed. I placed it on her headstone, where the rain would weather it, where the sun would bleach it, where eventually it would return to the earth. "I couldn't save you," I said. The words were hard, heavier than I expected, the particular grief of someone who has won a battle but lost the war that mattered. "I couldn't open your drawer in time, but I opened it for the others, for Patricia and Linda and Rosa and the woman who would have been next. That has to be enough. It doesn't feel like enough, but it has to be." The wind moved through the cemetery, carrying leaves and the distant sound of traffic. I stayed until the box was wet with rain, until my fingers were numb, until I could finally let go of the smile I had worn for 3 years and let my face do what it needed to do. I reopened my agency after the trial. Not the same agency, something different. I hired Claire Henderson as my investigator, Mrs. Chen's granddaughter as my office manager, Rosa's sister as my translator and liaison to the immigrant communities where women disappeared without reports. We specialized in cases the police wouldn't touch, the courts wouldn't hear, the world preferred to call domestic disputes or unfortunate accidents. We weren't always successful. Some men were too connected, too careful, too skilled at hiding. Some women were too afraid, too isolated, too convinced that no one would believe them. Some cases ended not with exposure but with more silence, more erasure, more graves in cemeteries where no one brought empty drawers. But sometimes we won. Sometimes we found the drawer, opened it, showed the world what was inside. Sometimes the cameras worked, the microphones recorded, the system that had been designed to protect predators was forced, by sheer visibility, to act. I am Marisol. I am 41 years old. I spent 3 years pretending to believe a murderer, smiling while he confessed, building a stage for his own destruction. I lost my sister, my career, and the particular innocence that lets you believe the police will protect you. I gained a family of women who had also lost, who had also been unseen, who had also learned that justice sometimes requires you to build your own courtroom and invite the world to watch. If someone killed your sister and the world called it her fault, if they built a foundation on her grave and called it grief, I need you to know, the spotlight they built can be turned. The stage they claimed can be shared. And the drawer they locked can be opened, even if it takes years, even if it costs everything, even if the only verdict you get is the one you force the world to see. See you in the next story.